Today's daf we're going to be learning is Pesachim Lamed Aleph. Today's daf is sponsored by Ann Rubin in honor of her rabbi, Andrea Mero, who's been an inspiration for her learning for as long as she has known her. Rabbi Mero is an inspiration to many in learning and in living a Jewish life with a focus on social justice, and Ann is grateful to be part of her community. And by Alana Storch, to the memory of Gloria Weissman, Zichrona Livracha, the mom of my dear friend and Chavrita partner, Patty Evans. May her memory be for a blessing. Thinking of you, Patty, and the whole family at this sad time. Okay, we're going to start at the bottom again where we ended off yesterday at the Mishnah on Daf Lamed Amud Bet. And today it's really going to, the beginning of this daf for sure is going to be more of an issue, a sugya that you would find in Bava Metzia rather than something you would find in Pesachim. Okay, Bava Metzia is all about laws of property, who belongs to what if someone takes out a loan and doesn't pay back? What about lien property? So we're going to get into all sorts of issues that might, some of them be very new to you, a little bit complicated. So brace yourselves. Hopefully it will be clear by the end. So I'm going back to the Mishnah. A Gentile lends money to a Jew, and the Jew gives as a collateral chametz. Achar Pesach mutar b'hana'ah. Once Pesach is over, it's permitted b'hana'ah because now we're going to see, it's going to be a bit of a question, but it seems that the collateral was in the hands of the Gentile and therefore it's okay, or was in we're going to make a distinction always, and it's going to be part of the question here. Is it owned by the Gentile or is it just considered in his possession? In other words, there's a bit of a difference between something being in one's possessions and being owned by the Gentile. The Yisrael if it's the reverse case, and I lent money to a Gentile and the Gentile paid me back or didn't pay me back, gave me as collateral chametz, then it will be forbidden to benefit from that chametz after Pesach. So now we're going to get into a question, itmar. So a different machloket, which it's going to obviously connect. Balchov, Abaye amar lemafreyahu goveh, v'Rava amar mikanu la'abal goveh. So when you give me a collateral for your loan, okay, so I lent you money, you gave me something for collateral. At what point do I become the owner of that? Normally what we would say is, right, it's just collateral. Once you renege on the loan and you don't pay me back, that collateral becomes mine. But the question is, when it becomes mine, is it as if it was mine from the beginning, says Abaye? Or, as Rava says, no, mikanu lahaba. Only from that point on, you didn't own it before, it wasn't yours. Someone just gave you their watch to protect, to keep as collateral. But it wasn't owned by me at that point. So that's the debate between them. So now the Gemara is going to limit that debate and say, Kol hecha de'akdish love, v'zabin love. And it's what's the relevance about when it's owned by me or not? It doesn't really matter, right? The collateral is mine for the having, okay? And if you don't pay me back, then I'll get it at the time. What does it matter if it was mine before or it was mine now? It doesn't really matter. So they say, well, it depends. What if let's say we took out a loan on Sunday. You borrowed money from me. You gave me something to use as collateral. Then you said you'd pay me back by Tuesday. So Monday comes before the loan is due. And on Tuesday, you don't end up paying me the money, let's assume, okay? You don't pay me the money, the collateral, the object becomes mine. What happens if on Monday, you took that item and you sold it to somebody else? Or, okay, this is what we call, it's mishuabad. Like really, it's designated to me, even though I don't necessarily own it. So if you sell it to someone, or you are makdish it, you sanctify it to the temple, okay? Everyone agrees that I can take that back from, let's say, okay, I'll use some examples of people here. Okay, Alana, you took out a loan for me, okay? And you gave me something of yours, and then you sold it to Tova. So at that point, I can go to Tova on Tuesday when you don't pay me back, and I can take the object from Tova. No problem. If you sanctified it to the temple, I can redeem it from the temple. Now, what does it mean to redeem it? Normally, it means I have to pay the value. That seems unfair. Why should I pay the value, right? You owe me the money. So Rashi says, very interestingly, which we're going to see in a minute, they quote from the Mishnah, but Rashi points out, even with a very small amount of money, and as I go to the I go to wherever it is. It doesn't have to be in the temple just because you sanctify it. It could still be in your house. It could be in my house. And you just said that item is sanctified and it will be sanctified. So how do I redeem it from, and the point is, you didn't really have rights to sanctify it. But since you did sanctify it, because really it belonged to me, and even what they're going to say here, and that's the important point, even Rava, who thinks that I don't really own it till Tuesday, they also don't think that you own it enough to do anything with it because it's really lean to me. So therefore, I can take it from Hekdesh. Let me just read the Mishnah, and then I'll go back to Rashi. Ditnan, the Mishnah says, Mosif o dinar upodet tenechasim elu. I just have to add 1 dinar. Now, what does it mean I add a dinar? Upodet tenechasim elu. I take a small amount of money, not the value of the item. I redeem it from the Hekdesh. And then, okay, there's different interpretations what exactly this means, but I'll go with this one. I can then add a dinar to what you owe me. Okay, you basically, now I had to put out money to redeem it from the Hekdesh, which Rashi is going to explain. Why do I need to put out money? Really, you didn't do anything because you didn't own it to redeem it. But Rashi says, in other words, it's symbolic. We don't want people to say, oh, look, somebody could remove something from having sanctity without paying any money. So we have me symbolically pay something small, and then I can add that to the money that you owe me, basically, Alana, because you really owed me that money. Okay, so now, in that case, everyone agrees that the borrower has no rights right now to do anything with that mashkon, because that mashkon, it's not yet owned by me. Again, debate, right? Nobody really thinks it's owned by me now. The only issue will be if Alana doesn't pay me on Tuesday, will it have been retroactively mine from Sunday, which means that I really was the owner? Or Rava says, no, it really is owned by me on Tuesday, but still it's lien to me beforehand. So Alana has no rights to go selling it or anything else. And if she does, right, this is what we call that when she sells something that I have access to, basically, I can easily just take that from the person that she sold it to. Ki pligi. So what's the machloka between them? Dizavin malve v'kadish malve. Okay, it's in the case where the malve, I sold it. Okay, now in this in-between status, it's true that Alana doesn't really have rights to do anything with it because it's lien to me. On the other hand, it's only lien to me. I don't own it right now because very easily on Tuesday, Alana might give me money, in which case I have to give her back her object. So I don't have rights to sell it. So now the question is, what if, now if Alana, if I sold it, okay, so I was Zavin Malve or Kaddish Malve. So if Alana comes back and pays me the money, so then she obviously can take it from wherever I bought it from and take it out of Hekdesh. But if she doesn't, and on Tuesday comes and that collateral object becomes mine, now the question is, when I sold it yesterday, was that a valid sale? Or when I sanctified it yesterday, was it valid? So that's the machloket Abaye and Rava. Abaye amar lemafreya hu goveh. Kevin demate zimne below pare, igali milta lemafreya demeikara b'rshute havakai v'shapir akdish v'shapir zavin. He says, this all goes retroactively. So really from now that Alana didn't pay me on Tuesday, from Sunday it belonged to me. In which case, when Tuesday comes and Alana doesn't pay, igali milta, that means it's now revealed to us that really from the beginning it was mine. And therefore my sale is good, or my hekdesh is, my sanctification is good, all works. The Rava Amar Mikanu Lahabu Gofe. Rava says, no, it wasn't valid at all because it only became mine on Tuesday when Alana didn't pay. Why? Because very simply, Kevan Ilu Havale Zuze, if Alana had the money, Havamisalik Bezuze, she would have paid me the money and she would have gotten the object back. So of course it wasn't mine to sell. Ishtakafta Hashta Kakane, which seems to imply that only from now, I'm Kone from Tuesday. Okay, that's the machloka between them. Comes the Gemara and starts to ask some questions on Rava. Umi amar Rava hachi? Did Rava really say this? Okay, eventually we're going to get back to our Mishnah. And our Mishnah doesn't seem to match that either, because remember, what did we say in our Mishnah? We'll get back to this, but I'll already say it if you're already thinking about it. The Mishnah said that if I gave an object, my chametz, to the Gentile for collateral, then what happens? The chametz is his basically for Pesach. It's not considered chametz shavar alav Pesach. But if Rava says it only becomes owned by him mikanu lehaba, it means it was mine. And if it's mine, then it should be chametz shavar alav Pesach. And the reverse with the second case in the Mishnah. So anyway, we'll get back to that. First we get to the very complicated part of the daf. We have a very complicated case. I'll try to use names also to make it easier. They use Reuven and Shimon, but I'll use names of people here. I think it'll make it easier to see than just Reuven and Shimon. Okay. V'ha'amar Rami Bar Chama, but did Rava really say this? Didn't Rami Bar Chama say? And soon you have to build it. Rami Bar Chama, then what Rava says about this, and then why that doesn't make sense. Reuven shemachar sadeh l'Shimon ba'achrayut. Okay, we're going to learn a lot of new things here today. Reuven sells a field to Shimon be'achrayut. Okay, some people say any field you sell automatically is achrayut. Okay, even if you don't say so, it's called achrayut ta'ut sofer. If you didn't write this in the contract, it's just a mistake of the sofer and it should be in there. But I'm not going to get into that debate whether or not it's assumed or not, right? Unless you say otherwise. But I'll explain to you the difference between achrayut and not achrayut. If I sell land to Alana, I sell Alana land. Now, what happens with this land? I sell you land. There's two options. Now, let's say I have a loan out. I owe someone money. They can collect loans if I don't pay them back from my land. So if I sell you land and my land is already liened to somebody else, they theoretically can go demand the money from Alana. They can take that field away from her. So when she goes to buy my field, it's a little bit of a risky business because maybe my Baal Chov, the one who I owe money to, will come and demand it from Alana. So therefore, what do we do in that case? So normally, again, this is either you say it's typical or maybe there's two options of how to sell a field. You can sell a field with achrayut or you can sell it without achrayut. That means now obviously it's going to cause a fluctuation in the price. I could say, listen, Alana, I'm selling you this field. You're desperate for it, right? And you're willing to pay. And I'm desperate to get rid of it. So I'll sell it to you for a cheaper price. But listen, I take no responsibility. If I don't pay back my loan, they can come and take it from you and sorry. That's without achrayut. With achrayut means that I sold it, and that's the case here. I sold it to Alana basically saying, if my creditor comes and takes, and I don't have money to pay him, and he takes that property, I'll pay you back the value of the property. Okay, I'll replace it for you. That's achrayut. So I sold the field to Shimon ba'achrayut. I sold to Alana with achrayut. But what happened? This was an interesting case, and this is what's going to cause a bit of confusion. Zikafan alav b'milva. Alana didn't have the money to pay me. So instead, she turned it into a loan. She basically said, I'm buying this property from you, but I don't have the money right now, so make it a loan. I'll pay you back. Let's say it was $1,000. I'll pay you, obviously not much land is $1,000, just picking a random number. I'll pay you back the $1,000 over time. We're going to make a loan out of it. Okay, so she loans me the money. The case gets a little trickier though, because mate Reuven, I die in the meantime. Okay, now there's different laws for my inheritors in terms of lien property, which we're going to get to now. Now, Atabal Chov de Reuven. Now, Gita owed me, I owed Gita money. So now what happens? She comes along and I don't have the money in my estate. So what does she do? Tarif Lemi Shimon. She basically takes the land directly away from Alana. But Alana really wants that property and she doesn't want to lose it. So what does she do? She convinces Gita that she's going to give her money in place of the property, the 1,000 shekel that it's worth, right? I owed Gita 1,000 shekel. Remember, Alana also owes me 1,000 shekel because she never paid me for the property. So first she takes the property, Gita takes the property, but instead the property Alana says, listen, I really want the land. I'm going to pay you the 1,000 shekel, the $1,000 and give me the land. I get to keep the land. So she kept the land. Now, so now you'd think Alana's done. She's paid her dues, right? She owed the 1,000 shekels. She's paid them to my creditor. So theoretically, she's good. She now has the land. She's paid her money. All's good. However, because of special laws by inheritors, okay, so the dinahu, the law is, Atu b'nei Reuven, my children who inherit my property, can go v'amri le Shimon and can say to Alana, Ana mi mitaltele shavik avun gabach. Sorry, not mi mitaltele, mitaltele shavik avun gabach. Our father had mitaltele, movable items with you, meaning you had a loan, you owed our father money. Okay, now we want to collect that money. Why? Mitaltele diyatme lebal chov lo mishtabde. That is not liened to any property. Okay, they basically are going to say, we can still collect that money because that money is a loan. It's not property, it's a loan. So you now owe us still 1,000 shekels, and you can't say, oh, but I have achrayut for that 1,000 shekel because it was a field, because we only have achrayut, and as our father took achrayut and said, I'll pay you back the field if they take the field. But we still have this loan out. You owe me the money. I don't care that, they ended up taking the property from you, but you still owe us money. So Amar Rava says, and here comes Rava, and he says, Pikach Shimon. If Shimon is smart, what will he do? Instead of if the Yatomim come and say, listen, we still have this outstanding loan. So what will he do? He can say, and here comes the question against Rava because of this. He says, Magbe luhu ara v'hadar gave laminayu. Alana can say, listen, I'll pay you back the money I owe you as a loan. I'll pay you back in land. Which land? The land that your father sold me. Now, your father, this is why it gets very confusing. Your father sold me the land, promising me that if someone collected that in pay of a loan, right? If someone collected it from me, then he would pay me back the value. So if I pay you the land, then basically it's because you're saying we owe you the property, right? And then I can demand the property back from you, because I can't demand metaltalim. I can't say achrayut on metaltalim, because you can't do that for yatomim. Only on land that the father owned. So I could say, hey, you took, right, and it's kind of funny. Alana gives the land back to the yatomim, and then says, hey, but I was promised that if anybody, the anybody became the inheritors of me, but if anybody demands that money, that back from us, we can take it back. Alana says, I'm allowed to take it back. So she's basically going to take it back from the yatomim. So what he says is, don't pay him money, because money you won't be able to take back from the yatomim. But if you pay him that land, you'll be able to demand it back, because the sale was done by achrayut, with responsibility. Now, this only works. Okay, we're going to learn now. If that's the case, okay, now why does this work? Da'amar Rav Nachman yatomim shegavu karka bechovat avihem, which is what they did. If yatomim, this is the law that it's based on. If children demand land based on their father, what was owed to their father, Baal chov chozer v'goveu tamehen. If the father owed money to someone else, the father can demand it. The Baal chov, the creditor, can demand that land from the children. What this basically is saying, and I want to make this very clear, if the yatomim go out and buy a field or get it some other way after the father dies, no one can take that land away from them, because that didn't come from the father. The only land that's liened to the father's property once the father dies is land that was either in the possession of the father when the father died. Now, this was in the possession of Shimon, right, of Alana, let's say. But if the children, not only is it land that the father owned at the time, also land that the father collected based on things that the father was owed. Okay, so since this land was taken from someone the father owed money to, someone who owed money to the father, which was Shimon, if he pays in land, so he deals with, right, the fact that he owes the children, but also he can demand it back. Okay, so Alana could come and take this land back, because Alana, what happened? The land that Alana bought from me was taken away by Gita, right? It was Gita who took the land. So Gita took that land away. So Alana can come back to me and say, to my kids and say, listen, you owe me land, right? They don't have to pay money, but they do have to pay land. So my inheritors don't have any land. But if Alana pays me back in land, then we'll have land. And that land, according to Rav Nachman, is land that's considered our father's land, because it was land collected for our father's loan. So therefore, Rava said, Rava said, if Alana is smart, that's what she'll do. She'll pay me back in land, so then she can collect her achrayut in land, because she's got two relationships with me, which is what makes this whole case confusing. She's got the relationship that she owes me money, the 1,000 shekel that she borrowed, but she's also got the relationship that I committed to her to pay her land back, right? If they take the land. So therefore, if she pays me in land, my Yatomim will have to pay her back in land. If she doesn't pay me in land and she pays me in money, and the Yatomim have no land that was owned by the father at the time of his death, or as if they were owned by the father at the time of death, then we don't have to pay back anything. But if she gives us the land, we'll have to pay her back in the land. So that would be the smart thing for Alana, and then she won't end up losing all her money. Otherwise, she's going to end up, she had to pay for the land already to Gita, and she has to pay me, my inheritors. So therefore, he suggests that. Now, what's the issue here? The issue is that, wait a minute, this land that Alana got was collateral. Remember, that was the collateral, in other words, for the loan, right? I said, if you don't pay me back, I'm going to take this land. So now, what did we assume? We said, karka that came back to the father because he was owned is considered as if it was in his property when he was still alive. Now that goes explicitly against what Rava said, because remember, that it's retroactive, that from the time, what happened, we had a loan, I lent Alana the 1,000 shekel and said, if you don't pay back, I'm taking the land back. So is the land considered in my possession or not? It depends if you hold like Rava or Abaye. If you hold like Abaye and say, it was mine, then I'm tulahachi chozer v'goveo tamehem. Then Alana can take it from my inheritors because as if it was my possession before I died. It's as if, since it belonged to me originally, it was as if it was in my possession. This is funny. You would think lemafreya, who is a good thing. In this case, it's a bad thing for me because if it belonged to me from the beginning, then you can demand it from my children, my inheritors. But if you're going to say it's only from the time that you don't pay me, then you can't take it from the Yatomim. It's as if the Yatomim bought this new property when they demanded it back from you, right? When my children demanded from Alana the land, it's as if it's something new because it's only from now that it kicks in. Now, anything new, you can't take from children anything that didn't belong to the father in his life. If my children go out and buy a new property, it's not going to be linked to any of my previous loans. That would be very unfair to all children, right? Inheritors. So therefore, we say, how can Rava say this? So now they're going to obviously have to say this is something different. Shanehatam, this case is unique to Amr Lehu, because Alana can say to my children, okay, now remember, Alana plays two roles here. She both owes me money, but she also is owed money by me because Gita took away the land, so I owe her money. So Rabbi Natan, let's read Rabbi Natan and then we'll go back and explain. This is something very famous called Shibuda de Rabbi Natan. We're going to see this again, as I mentioned, when we get to Bava Metzia. Titania, Rabbi Natan Omer, Minayin lenoshe b'chavero maneh, v'chavero b'chavero. Okay, if I owe money to Gita and Alana owes money to me, so motziim mizeh v'notnim lezeh, right? Gita can go straight to Alana if she wants. Okay, how do we know this? Talmud Omer, he learns it from a pasuk, v'natam la'asher hasham lo. Okay, he learns it from this pasuk. In any case, the point is that what? Since it was Mushuabad Lavuchon, the lamb was lean to me, Mishtabnami Labal Chov Davuchon. Therefore, Alana is owed money by me. It's as if the land that she owed me was actually lean to her. Okay, so it basically, she's got two things going on. And based on Rabbi Natan, we don't need three people in this case. It's really just two people. She's playing both roles and she can therefore demand it from herself. She can basically give us the land and take it back from us. Okay, it's as if she's taking it directly from herself. It's not like she's taking land. It doesn't have to fit into this category of did the father own it in his life or not. She can just go directly to herself and take the property. So that's why this works and having nothing to do in the end with Limafreya or Lahaba. It's a unique law of the Shibuda de Rabbi Natan. Okay, that was the very complicated part of today's stuff. So now we're going to move on and have another question. This is what I mentioned before, that our Mishnah doesn't make sense according to Rava. Tana, Nochri shilvat Yisrael achimso. The Nochri lends money to a Jew, to me, let's say, and I give the Nochri chametz. Achara Pesach mutar ba'ana. So again, this doesn't make any sense. If we say, really, it was his from the beginning, that makes perfect sense. That's Abaye. But Ela Iyamar Mikan Only when I don't pay back the land, the loan, it becomes his, which will be after Pesach. So amai mutar bana, over Pesach, it was clearly still mine. Birshuta d'Yisrael havakai. So what do they answer? The case is, okay, Rashi says, Kashirino, it's slow. If you look 5 lines from the bottom of the page about, okay, basically, we're going to say, and this we're going to explain later, that if you give, there's 2 ways of having a collateral. I could say, listen, my property is linked to the loan, but the property is still in my possession. Or my watch is yours to take, but it's still in my house. Or the chametz is yours to take, but it's in my house. But if I give it to you, and we're going to learn this on the next page, the next side, that Baal Chov is koneh mashkon. There's a special law from the Torah that he acquires the collateral. So therefore, it's his, okay? So it belongs to the Gentile if it's in his house. Okay, if I give it to him in his house, then he has a certain type of ownership over it. Okay, even though we're going to kind of raise a question on this later, but right now they're going to assume that that's the case. So now they say lema ketanai. Let's suggest that this whole machloket Rav and Abaye is actually a machloket between Tanaim. How so? Well, now we're going to see a different source that says something a little different from our Mishnah. Yisrael shehovel lenochri al chemtzo. If I lend money to a nochri and a nochri gives me his chametz, lachar Pesach eino over. There's no problem of okay. This is different than what we said, right? He's not over on Baal on right on chametz on Pesach on chametz shavar alav Pesach. Now, mishum Rabbi Meir amru over, but Rabbi Meir's in the name of Rabbi Meir it was said it is a problem. So now they say, oh, maybe this is the root of their machloket. Ma'la b'kamiflage. Demar savar lemafrei hu gove, umar savar lekbikanu labau gove. That would be the simplest way to understand this machloket. If you say when you take a collateral, right, it's as if it was owned by you from the beginning, then when the Jew lent money to the Nochri and gave him chametz, it's no problem because the Gentile is basically the owner of that chametz. But if you say like Rava, mikanu lahaba, then it's not going to be a problem, right? It's actually, the chametz is going to be a problem. It's not going to be owned by the Gentile. It's going to be the Jew's chametz and it will be a problem. But the Gemara doesn't like that because they say if it all depends on, right, then what will be the flip case? Let's say it's a Nochri, Shehovali Yisrael al Chemtzo. The Nochri loaned the money. The Yisrael, I'm sorry, did I say it right? Yisrael lent money to the Nochri and the Nochri gave, sorry, I think I might have confused it. The Nochri gave him the chametz. So, right, if we say that he acquired it right away, then what are we going to say? Then the Jew acquires it, it's a problem, right? It's over chametz shavar alav Pesach. If not, he's a no over. The reverse case would be the flip, right? It all just depends on, do you view it as, did you acquire it or did you not? But look at the seifa of that braita. Aval nochri shoval Yisrael chemtzo. If a nochri loans money to a Jew and the Jew gives chametz to the Gentile, what would you assume, right? If you hold mikanu lahaba, then it's still owned by the Jew. If you say lemafrea, then it's owned by the Gentile and it's not a problem. But it says here, it doesn't say it's a machloket. It says lachar Pesach divrei kol over. Everyone agrees that after Pesach, this is a problem, okay? So again, the Nochri lent money to the Jew and the Jew gave the Nochri, this is against our Mishnah, right? The Jew gave the Nochri chametz. After Pesach, everyone agrees it's a problem. So, ha'ipchem ebayle, it should be the reverse, right? It should be the reverse of the first case. L'man damar hatam eino over, hacha over. L'man damar hatam over, hacha eino over. All the whole machloka between them is just about who owned it based on what we hold about lemafrea or lahaba, then it should be exactly flipped. So therefore they say, ela hacha b'mayaskinan, kigon shehiri, no, it's slow. The case must be that you gave it to the person. Okay, so again, physically it was in their house. And then what did we say previously? We said if it's in their house, they have ownership rights. But now we're going to see why is there a difference between the case where a Jew gave the money to the Nochri and the Nochri gave his collateral to the Jew versus, right, where there's a disagreement versus the case when everyone agrees that, I keep confusing the case. Israel Shoval the Nochri, if the Gentile's collateral is by the Jew, there's the disagreement. And if the Jew gives his collateral to the Gentile, right, Nochri shehova Yisrael al chemso. The Nochri lent money to the Jew, and the Jew therefore gave his collateral to the Gentile. Okay? In the case of the Jew giving his collateral to the Gentile, everyone agrees. In the case where the collateral was in the hands of the Jew, there's a disagreement. So now we're going to see why. The kamiflage de Rabbi Yitzchak. Their whole machloket is how to understand this halach of Rabbi Yitzchak. And this is I mentioned earlier, but now we're going to see it inside. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak. Minayin lebal chov shekone mashkon. How do you know that someone who's owed money, acquires a mashkon? Now we're going to see there's this unique halach of the Torah that if you're owed money, then and you take a mashkon, it becomes yours. You become an owner of it. Shenemar ulecha tiyeh tzedakah. You have to understand this verse. This verse is saying when you loan someone money and they give you a collateral, in Dvarim Perek Kaf Daled Pasuk Yud Gimel, it says, Hashev tashiv lo et avot kivo hashemesh v'shachav b'salmato u'berachecha u'lecha tiyeh tzedakah l'fnei Hashem Elokecha. Every night you have to return, if you took clothing, let's say, you have to return them clothing so you could sleep with it. Okay, let's say it's a blanket. So you have to return, if this poor person and you took a collateral, right, they obviously don't have a lot of items. You have to give it back every night. You can take it every morning and every night return. And then it says, ulecha tiyeh tzedakah. Now, what does it mean, ulecha tiyeh tzedakah? It will be considered that you did something good, right? Now, the Gemara is going to say like this, or Rabbi Yitzchak says, Imeino koneh mashkon tzedakah minayin. If, when I took your collateral, your object is collateral, your blanket, let's say, if it's not mine, then of course I have to return it to you every night. It's not like, oh, and you did a great thing. Ulecha tiyeh tzedakah will be a righteous deed that you did. No. And tzedakah, they understand like you did charity, right? You did something more like you didn't need to do. So now, if I didn't acquire it, then I'm just giving you what's rightfully yours. Mikan, so therefore Rabbi Yitzchak says, from the words of the Torah, ulecha tiyeh tzedakah, we derive lebal chov shekoneh mashkon. Okay, now, we learn that any Baal Chov acquires the mashkon. So now, what's the machloket then? Tanakama, Rabbi Meir. Tanakama savar. Now remember, our case was a Jew and a Gentile. So he comes and he says, Hanemila Yisrael mi Yisrael hu dekarina be'ulecha tiyeh tzedakah. If a Jew takes a collateral from a Jew, then it becomes his. Aval Yisrael mi nochri lo kane. But a Yisrael cannot, if it's with a Gentile, he doesn't acquire it. Okay, this law, ulecha tiyeh tzedakah, is between you and your fellow Jews. And therefore, if you take collateral from a Gentile, according to Tanakama, you're not over on Chametz Shavar Alav Pesach because it wasn't yours. You don't acquire it. That's the deen of Rabbi Yitzchak is just for Jews and Jews. Rabbi Meir Savar Kavachomer Yisrael mi Yisrael Kani Yisrael mi Nachri Lo Kol Sheken. If you're going to acquire it from a Jew, all the more so you'll acquire it. In other words, we assume it's a unique halacha by a Jew who acquires collateral. It doesn't matter Jew or not, whether it's from a Jew or from a non-Jew. The assumption is a non-Jew, and this is a bit of a difficult assumption, has less rights to property damage, to property in Jewish law. So therefore, if he acquires it from the Jew, all the more so he'll acquire it from a non-Jew. And therefore, we're going to assume that Rabbi Meir says, of course it belongs to the Jew, and therefore it's Chametz Shavar Alav Pesach, if the Jew is holding a collateral of a Gentile. Now, but now, why in the other case, when the Nochri has the Jew's object, do we say, remember what we said there? Nochri she'oval Yisrael al chemtzo, lachar Pesach divrei hakol over. If the Gentile lent money to the Jew and the Jew gave him chametz, everyone agrees that what? And again, different from our Mishnah, everyone agrees that it's a problem of chametz, meaning it's still owned by the Jew. Now, why is that? Oh, well, that everyone agrees about, because Rabbi Yitzchak's halacha was obviously said about a Jew owning collateral, but it was never said about a Gentile. So therefore, we're going to read this inside now. This law was a unique law said to the Jewish people. If you take collateral, you become an owner of it. Okay, you still have to treat the person nicely and you have to return it to them, but you theoretically are the owner. That's only for Jews. The Torah wasn't written for Gentiles, so it doesn't apply to them. So therefore, when a Gentile takes your collateral, it's still yours. Therefore, if Pesach comes, it's a problem. Now we're going to have to work out our Mishnah with this. Tanan, And how do we explain our Mishnah before? In order to explain Rava, what did we say? Our Mishnah is referring to when it was sitting in his house. So Nochri, look at our Mishnah. It says in our Mishnah, Nochri Shovah Yisrael Achimtzo. Achara Pesach Mutar. By the way, I just want to review. That whole section was to say, we thought that maybe this machloket Tanaim between Rabbi Meir and Tanakama had to do with the exact machloket that Rav and Abai were arguing about. In the end, they say no. It has to do with this halacha, Baal Chov Koneh Mashkon, if it's applicable also to Jews and Gentiles or not. Okay, to a Jew owning, right? Did they own a collateral, an item of a Gentile or not? That's the debate between them. It has nothing to do with Rav and Abai. But now going back to our Mishnah, the way we explained it before, now what did we explain about this before when we tried to explain the question on Rava? We said, Nihinami dihir hino etzlo. Right? Now, what's the assumption? If a Gentile lends money to a Jew and the Jew gives the Gentile his chametz, our Mishnah said it's mutar bana'ah. And why did we say so? Because it was in the possession, right? It was in the house of the Gentile, and that's enough. So now, ha'amar nochrim Yisrael lo kani. But didn't we just say a minute ago, right? Those things don't work hand in hand. We just said that the nochri doesn't acquire, right? That Braita said the exact opposite. That said the nochri doesn't acquire your chametz at all, in which case it's going to be a problem of chametz shavar alav pesach. So how do we reconcile the Braita with the Mishnah according to the way we understood our Mishnah to explain Rav? So they say lo kashya, hada amar le me'achshav, hada lo amar le me'achshav. It depends what he said when he gave you the item. Did he say, I'm giving you my chametz. If I don't pay the loan, this is yours from now. If you said the words from now, then that's our Mishnah. It became the Gentiles and there's no problem of chametz on Pesach. But if he didn't say from now, then it's still the Jews and therefore you're going to be chayav on chametz shavar alav Pesach, and that's the Braita. So we're now going to have to explain, the only way to explain it, each one was in a different case. There was a different wording when giving the item to the Gentile. Okay, so now the Gemara says, where'd you get this distinction from? Who's to say that there's a difference whether you said from now or you didn't say from now? Titania, so we're going to see it in the following source. It says in a Braita, Nochri shehilchin pat porni etzel Yisrael, or Nochri that gave to the Jew in his house as a collateral, he gave bread. Okay, porni is, Rashi says, was made in a big oven. Rashi says they just gave this as an example of a type of bread that one would give. Eino ovel. Okay, if the Nochri gives this to the Jew as collateral, it's not a problem of chametz shavar alav Pesach, even though it's sitting in the Jew's house. But ima marlo higaticha. But if he says this is coming to you, or I'm trying to figure out exactly how to translate those words, but higia, this is for you, then it's a problem. So the Gemara says, but what's the difference if you said higaticha or you didn't say higaticha? So they say, elalav shmamina. The difference between higaticha and not higaticha is exactly this distinction. Me'achshav or not me'achshav. Higaticha means this is yours right now. If it says this is yours right now, then it's going to be a problem because it's saying it belongs to the Jew. If he doesn't say those words, then it's not a problem. Okay. Now we're getting to the very simple part of today's stuff. If the first part was super complicated, this part was a little less complicated, but still kind of complicated. Now we're getting to easier stuff. Tanu Rabanan. Chanut shel Yisrael u'melai shel Yisrael u'poalei nochrim nichnesim l'sham. If you have a store of a Jew and all the produce in the store belongs to the Jew, all not produce or whatever it might be, all the inventory in the store belongs to the Jew. But there's a lot of non-Jewish workers. Now, what happens? After Pesach, you find some chametz that was there over Pesach. This is classic rules of majority. We just assume since the store is owned by a Jew and all the inventory in the store is Jew, therefore we're going to assume it came from the Jew. Not only is it forbidden to benefit, it's also obviously forbidden to eat. But if it's the reverse, the store belonged to the Gentile, all the inventory was the Gentiles, and there's Jewish workers there, any chametz you find there, Chametz is not only permitted to eat, you can also obviously benefit from. Okay, new Mishnah. We saw this before. If you have chametz that a big pile of rubble fell upon it and it's buried underneath there, it's as if you destroyed that chametz, okay? Meaning you don't have to burn it, you don't have to take away all the rubble and burn it. Obviously, there's going to be a few questions here, which is, one of them, okay, number one, do you have to do bitul on this? Number two, how big a pile of rubble are we talking about? The next thing they say, Rav Shimon Gamliel, he disagrees with Tanakh. He doesn't say any mapolet. He says it has to be enough that a dog can't get under there, which again, the Gemara is going to have to say how tall is that? So Amar Rav Chisda, so Rav Chisda first of all says you have to do bitul because otherwise maybe something will happen over Pesach. You'll see it and it'll be yours and it'll be a problem. So you have to do bitul. It's not enough to just say, oh, it's under the pile, it's destroyed. If you burn your chametz and it's really mivo'al, you don't have to do bitul on the chametz you burnt. It's obviously gone. But this chametz is mivo'al, but it's not exactly because it's still there. So therefore you have to do bitul, right? You have to nullify it and say, this doesn't belong to me anymore. Tana. Now they're going to bring a braita, which explains kama chafisata kelev, right? How tall does it have to be that a dog can't get under there? Because again, the Mishnah likes to tell things in examples, and the Gemara likes to quantify. We need, okay, that's very nice, but give us an amount. So how much? Shlosha tvachim, our classic 3 tvachim, right? That we know from everything we learned Shabbat and everything. 3 tvachim levud. Okay, so that's the amount. 3 handbreadths. Amalei Rav Acha Bered Rav Yosef le Rav Ashi. Now we're going to talk about a different law and compare it. There's another place where it talks about something is buried. Okay, in this case, it has to be buried. The question is it the same? Is it the same? Same laws. So Hadamar Shmuel Ksafim ein lahem shmira ela b'karka. If somebody gives you money to watch, you have to bury it. You can't leave it out because someone might use it. So if you have to bury it, do we compare this to what Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says and says, just like here, it has to be 3 tvachim buried under the ground. Also there, did it have to be 3 tvachim buried? So Amarle says, no, these two cases aren't comparable at all. We don't want you to smell this chametz. In order to prevent you from smelling the chametz, someone mentioned Angel's Bakery the other day, right? That smell, in order to get rid of that great smell of bread, it has to be buried 3 tvachim and then you won't smell it anymore. But it could be to prevent the dog from smelling it. And then, because again, if the dog could smell it, then what will happen? The dog will go and dig under the rubble and get to it. So that's why we say 3 tvachim. The dog won't get to the food. But hatam mishumi kasuye me'enahu. The other case with the money, we just don't want you to see the money or anyone else to see it and maybe use it. Therefore, lo b'ay shlosha. That's why you don't need 3 tvachim. So now, obviously, the question becomes v'kama. So how much do you need for that? Amar from Bar Papa misichra tefach. He says a tefach. Okay, so when it comes to the money being buried, that's only a tefach. When it comes to the food being buried, you need 3 tefachim in order to consider that it's not in your possession at all. Okay, that's it for today. If those ideas of achrayut and all that seem very new and confusing, have no fear. We will address these sugyot much, much more over time, much more in depth. Well, again, as I always say, after seeing these sugyot many, many times, things will become, the concepts of shibud, achrayut, and all that will become much more clear and understandable. Have a great day.